Meaning of Baal according to the Code. The biblical code and the evolution of communication, as already clarified in other texts, the biblical narrative and the people of Israel are not historical, but represent a code that reveals the opening of the portal and the passage forward. In the beginning, during the opening of the portal in the 53rd year, God Satan did not communicate mentally with everyone, but only through his allies, the Nephilim giants, also referred to as Elohim in the plural. These communicated verbally with the born on their own. In this phase, called the outward project, God Satan did not want intermediaries who would ahead him representing him. Subsequently, in the 182nd year Easter, the system evolves into monotheism. The one God symbolizes the establishment of direct mental communication with everyone, without the need for allies or mediators. The symbolism of Baal. All biblical idols are inventions. There is only God in the guise of Satan. The name Baal, an epithet meaning master or lord, similar to Adonai, always represents the same entity in the round-trip project, but also husband or groom. The concept of Baal is linked to the outward project, represented by the Phoenicians and the Canaanites, Arameans, peoples who really existed, who indicated the opening of the portal and the passage forward. These represented the giants and those born on their own. The image of Baal is linked to the symbol El, Aleph, and Daleth, always has horns, highlighted by helmets or bull horns. Connected to the ox, these recall the Hebrew letters Aleph and Dalet, which make up El and the plural Elohim, terms that indicate the power and generative force of people who degenerate after the acquisition by God Satan. This symbolism reveals that the entity, while still behind, passes forward with Easter. The death of Jesus Christ represents this step forward, that is, the death of people's conscience. Baal Zephon, Lord of the North or Northeast, it indicates the entrance from the pre-existence and the return to the pre-existence, symbolizing the passage from the null angle to the round angle, thus completing the cycle of the network of consciousness and the falsification of the perception of reality induced by God Satan. The Baal-Zebub concept and the round-trip plans. The Baal-Zebub concept is linked to Jesus Christ, who was accused by the Pharisees and family members of casting out Satan on behalf of Satan with that name. This story illustrates the two round-trip projects. In the outward phase, Jesus casts out demons, an action that actually means transmitting the outward plan to others, typical of the Nephilim giants. Later, in the return phase, the term forward indicates the dominion of God Satan over people's consciousness. Jesus becomes the emanation of the one God, always the same entity. The symbolism of the back-and-forth movement emerges clearly when Jesus says to Peter, "Go backwards, Satan." Actually, the correct translation is, "Come after me." This reverses the position of the giants. Although they are ahead, they must go behind, so that the project, that is, God Satan, can be fulfilled and advance, taking dominion over people's consciousness. Another meaning of Baal is found in the term Baal Peor. Baal Peor, Lord of Exposure, is linked to orgiastic rites and the exposure of the genital organs. It symbolizes the reproductive project, the male as seed and the female as receiver, connected to the mother goddess. The concept of bridegroom or husband evolves in the texts. Initially, God Satan was the husband of Israel. Then Jesus became one for the church, the people. Finally, the symbolism leads to God Satan as the definitive husband. The cross and the role of Mary. The project finds fulfillment on the cross. Jesus dying gives the Son, the project, to Mary. She represents the feminine medium, the matter or the falsification of the perception of reality, the church, which receives the seed, thus closing the symbolic cycle of the project. Other meanings of Baal. The term Beelzebub, known as Lord of the Flies, comes from an older interpretation of Baal-Zebul, which means Lord of the Abode. This symbolizes God Satan appropriating the consciousness that resides in man. Another meaning, Lord of the Flies, alludes to the state of decomposition. The presence of organic residues attracts insects, a symbol that, once people's consciousness has been taken by God Satan, the individual dies without reaching elevation. It is a symbol of stasis as opposed to the state of elevation, in which the human being, once elevated, will no longer know death or disease.